One year, a long time ago, my little daughter began to have doubts. She came to me and asked, "Dad, is there really a Santa Claus?" With complete honesty, I answered her, "Yes." Now, all these years later, I want to explain that answer. At the time I was born, my parents, a daughter and 2 sons counting me, lived on a ranch in the heart of the Rocky Mountains in Montana. The ranch on Willow Creek was about as far away from civilization as a person could get and still be a part of civilization. Willow Creek itself was a small stream that sported cutthroat trout to be caught in the summer and snow-covered hills to be sledded down in the winter. Higher up, Black Pine Ridge ran behind our house. On the other side of the valley, Sandstone Ridge. Those names themselves describe the character of the mountains that Willow Creek twisted its way through. This is the valley where I grew up. From days before I can remember, long before I ever caught my first trout, or pulled a sled up a hill by myself and went belly-buster back down, I became acquainted with Santa Claus. An early encounter that I remember involved a trip to the big city, Butte, and Burr's, a department store with an escalator. My grandma lived there, in Butte, and it was a long drive, especially in winter. Willow Creek was 20 miles of snow-packed, icy, windy, sometimes steep gravel roads out of the closest town, and that town was only our little town, not the big city. Santa Claus came to the big city, and the big city was much farther away. Once there, the wonder of the only escalator a little boy had ever seen captured that little boy's fancy as much as the visit with the man dressed in red. After multiple trips up and down the escalator, Santa Claus listened as the boy and his brother and sister, 3 kids who had traveled very far, told what they wanted for Christmas. I remember that Santa Claus very well. You see, he was the one who drove our family over to Burr's, and once there led his boy up and down the escalator. He was the one who listened while my brother, my sister, and I told what we wanted. Afterwards, he drove us back home again. He carried his youngest boy, worn out by excitement, and lulled to sleep by double clicks of the dimmer switch and the erratic rhythm of vacuum-powered wiper blades struggling to hold a blizzard of snowflakes at bay, into the house and put him into his bed. He then restoked the fires in our stoves before he too went to bed. The kids didn't know it, but the trip in the car and the multiple trips up and down the escalator were part of our Christmas present that year, and again for many years afterwards. That year, like most years, Santa Claus didn't put much under our Christmas tree, but it was enough. The weeks of scouring the toy section of the Monkey Wards and Sears Roebuck Christmas catalogs and the excitement of his visit overshadowed the gifts that he brought, which were usually sort of like what we asked for, but not exactly. In most houses, Santa Claus made his delivery after the kids went to bed and were sound asleep. At our house, he delivered the gifts on Christmas Eve before we went to bed. Every year, after supper, the next-door neighbors from 3 miles up the creek would show up at our door, Marcia and Hans. They came down for Tom and Jerry's and kids. We all got a Tom and Jerry, including a drizzle of brandy and a sprinkle of nutmeg. The brandy for the kids didn't matter because we just spooned the batter off the top anyway, and I was always good for at least 1 refill. About the time the adults' mugs were approaching empty, someone would suggest that we might want to go for a ride up the road, or down the road, one or the other. Then they would sell the idea to the kids. I don't remember all the exact reasons for the rides, but they seemed to make sense. One time it was that we had to see the sparkles of headlights in the snow. They told us they looked just like diamonds. And they did. During the convincing, somebody would warm up the car. We'd throw on our coats, head out the door, and go for a ride. By the time we got back, Santa would already have come and delivered our gifts. My brother and I were torn between being disappointed that we missed seeing him again, and knowing that he wouldn't have come if we had been there. There was a pattern to those car rides, and after a couple, it didn't take much convincing to get us out of the house, but sometimes it seemed like the car rides were longer than they needed to be. Marcia and Hans came to our house each year. They were older than my parents, so on Christmas Eve they would have been home alone, with their kids and their grandkids far away. When we were little, they got to participate in the excitement of 3 little kids finding their gifts and opening presents. That's the reason that Santa Claus couldn't hold off and come during the middle of the night like he did at other houses. He couldn't hold off because each year he had a gift to deliver to Marcia and to Hans, too. Santa Claus stayed with us in our house, day by day, year in, year out. His workshop was the ranch itself. There he built the real gifts that he delivered to us kids. He built up the ranch. Barbed wire fences, new shop, new barn, new corrals. 2, then 3 boys, dug post holes, stretched wire, climbed scaffolding, cut poles, and pounded spikes and nails. Santa Claus put up the hay. He drove the baler. The boys hand-cranked the gas pump, greased machinery, drove tractors, bucked bales, and when he was out of sight, sometimes went for occasional skinny dips in the creek. During the fall, Santa Claus snaked dead trees out of the woods. Then one day, late in the fall, Hans, the neighbor from up the creek, and Edward, the neighbor from down, showed up at the pile of trees. The men and the boys carried pieces of tree to a buzzsaw and cut them into blocks. We worked at it all day until the pile of trees was gone. As the pile of trees shrunk one by one, a new mountain of blocks grew, 1 block at a time. The next day, we did the same for Hans, and a week later for Edward. The blocks of wood later had to be hauled home, chopped into firewood, and loaded into the wood box. Tasks done by boys. Tasks that lasted through the fall and the winter. Santa Claus sat down with us at supper every night. He ate breakfast with us in the morning. He rode with us in the car to football games and basketball games. He taught us to drive. He taught us to be independent. He taught us to work together, to depend on others and to help others. And he taught us the balance. One day, Santa Claus drove me to college. He shook my hand and gave me an awkward hug. Then he left me with the gifts he had given me. Not the ones he had delivered on those Christmases so long ago, not the ones I had forgotten. Instead, he left me with gifts that I had yet to discover. Santa Claus didn't leave his gifts and go. Rather, I took his gifts and I went, not so very far away, but nevertheless away, for several years. Then one day he came to live in my house. With me was a young wife. We had a new baby boy who needed gifts that only Santa Claus could deliver. Not very long after Santa Claus arrived, a second baby arrived, a little girl. Santa Claus was back at it. I remember his time in our house very clearly, children squealing while he chased them around the living room, mad dashes to the toilet where he sometimes got zippers unzipped fast enough and sometimes not. I remember him making caramels in our kitchen with the kids and a hungry dog hovering by the stove. I remember how disappointed in himself he was one Christmas when the Millennium Falcon had been requested by so many little boys that there was not one left to deliver to one special little boy who had also made that as his only request. I remember how delighted he felt to hear the deep, booming, husky voice of a 5-year-old boy retell the Star Wars movie, and how special it was for him to hold the hand of one little girl. Santa Claus loved our kids as if they were his own. As the years passed, Santa Claus had a real workshop in our house, a wood shop out in the garage. His hands, not the hands of elves, put together gifts of wood for the 2 children that lived in our house. As he had done with me, Santa Claus sat with our 2 kids every night as they ate supper. He ate breakfast with them in the morning. He cooked pancakes on Sundays, and he rode with the kids while they went for their Saturday morning donuts. He rode with them to ball games, soccer games, tennis matches, and speech meets. Once, he even drove our girl up a walking path all the way to Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany. One after another, Santa Claus watched each of our kids go off to college. They went off carrying gifts far beyond what Santa Claus had ever handed them or left under their tree. The story of Santa Claus for our kids doesn't end there. Each of the kids went off carrying a big piece of Santa Claus's heart. That sounds like another gift from Santa Claus, but the reality is that it was a gift for Santa Claus. Those pieces of his heart have swollen with pride, as from a distance he has watched the gifts that they carried away with them blossom. He has watched that little boy and that little girl, who he once brought trucks and dolls, who bounced on his belly, who climbed into his lap, and who cried on his shoulder, become adults with little ones of their own. And in those pieces of his heart, they have given back more than he ever gave to them. Now, those two kids that Santa Claus lived with in our house have kids of their own, and Santa Claus has come to live at their houses too. One year, a long time ago, our little girl began to have doubts. She came to me and asked, "Dad, is there really a Santa Claus?" With complete honesty, I answered her, "Yes." Until now, I have never given her or our boy any answer except yes. Now, after all these years, I can add to my answer. As long as there are mothers and fathers and daughters and sons, as long as there is any person anywhere who desires to give a gift just for the joy it will bring to another, there will always be a Santa Claus. More than 2 millennia ago, there was a father. He had already gifted his children in more ways than they could ever count, but he knew that there was still one gift that they needed, a gift that would bring everlasting joy to those children. And so he gave that gift. We celebrate that gift every year, and Santa Claus is part of that celebration.